Hi there, it's Tracy Kiernan from stepbysteppainting.net, and this acrylic painting tutorial is going to show you how to paint a super adorable Valentine's Day bike with acrylics on an 11 by 14-inch canvas. This design can work as a year-round design too, so you can change the colors and the type of flowers in the basket. You can even omit the balloons. I am going to be using a traceable template for this, so you'll need to print this out. If you're doing 11 by 14, this one is printed out on 2 sheets and taped together. You can also just print it out on 1 sheet and do it on a smaller size canvas or resize the traceable. I used only 2 brushes for this painting, so I used a 3/4 flat wash brush and a number 4 round brush for all the detail work. These are the Princeton Velvet Touch brushes. And the colors that I used for this painting are Mars Black, Hooker's Green Hue Permanent, Titanium White. I also used the colors Light Pink, Naphthol Crimson, Quinacridone Magenta, and Cadmium Yellow Medium Hue. Feel free to use the colors that you have available. And I used a black Posca paint pen for some of the detail work in the spokes of the bike. Also optional if you don't have a paint pen. You can also just use a Sharpie for that step. So the first thing we're going to do is with our blank canvas, we're going to be using this 3/4 flat wash brush. We're going to be painting the background. So this is a warm pinkish, kind of an orangish background, something fun and different. Been doing a lot of winter bluey gray paintings lately, so it is really refreshing to do a warm spring-like background, even though it's not spring just yet. But so we're going to go ahead and load our brush in the water, kind of tap it dry, and we want to double load into pink and white. So there's no way you can mess this background up, because basically we're just taking that pink, white, and yellow, and we're just literally slapping it onto the canvas. So we're just kind of blending these colors together. I'm just doing like these expressive angled strokes. You want to just be careful not to use too much of the yellow. That yellow is going to be really strong and it's going to turn our painting kind of bright. So you want to offset that yellow by adding a lot of white to it so it turns more of a pastel yellow. The bike is really the focus in this painting, so we want a very soft pastel background, and then our bike's going to have those bold colors, and that's going to allow that to stand out a little bit better. So you want to just make sure that your background is not too bold and bright. Use a lot of white to really kind of tone it down. I'm going to fill up most of this canvas, but leave about a 2 to 3 inch gap on the bottom. The grass area is about 2.5 inches, but if we leave about 2 to 3 inches of space, we should be fine. Probably about 2 inches of space on the bottom. So, and if you ended up painting the entire thing and going all the way down, that's okay. When that dries, we can always paint green, our green ground over that. So what I'm doing with this background is I'm making different areas of different colors. So there's a little bit more yellow kind of in the middle, top part's more soft pink, so there's a nice variety of color. So we're blending, but we're not over blending. If I kept painting over this 20, 30 times, it's just going to end up being the same color. And I want kind of a variety of nice pastels, soft pinks, soft yellow colors. So a little bit of white right in the middle just to kind of soften that yellow. Kind of just using up the rest of the color on my palette. I ended up not using a lot of that yellow, so maybe just a little bit of yellow. If you want to conserve paint for this, you don't need much yellow for the background. So we have that gap on the bottom, and we don't need to wait for this to dry unless you ended up painting the whole canvas, and you might want to let that dry a bit. We are going to be painting the green grass area, and I did not rinse my brush for this. It's okay, because if there's a little pink or yellow still on the brush, it's not going to ruin that green. Well, let's go ahead and take our ruler and kind of measure 2.5 inches from the bottom. That measurement does not have to be exact, but I like to provide measurements just so you kind of know where we're painting it on the canvas. So if you want to just estimate that, that's fine. And so that's kind of where our horizon line is going to be for our ground area. And we're not going to be super detailed and do grass texture or anything like that. We're just painting this green area starting from the bottom. And then I want to kind of make our green go a little bit lighter at the top. So, and if you have leftover yellow on your palette and you want to mix your yellow into your green, that's a good way to kind of use up that yellow, because we won't be using that yellow again in this painting, unless you want yellow flowers. But adding a little bit of yellow into that green is going to kind of give it that spring green look. And just kind of paint your green, and then towards the top where we made that little mark, that's kind of where our horizon line is. We want to add a little bit of white to the top so that our grass area is lighter at the top and darker on the bottom. It's going to give your land area a little bit of depth. So if you want to go ahead and just add extra darker green at the bottom and just a pop of light color, light green at the top. Also, the top edge of this does not have to be straight. You see me kind of taking my brush and making it more kind of wavy on the edge, and you can do the same too. It does not have to be perfectly straight. Then we can go ahead and, so I'm going to wipe my brush off, and I'm just going to add a little bit more white kind of towards the top of this grass, kind of a little extra detail just to get this to be a little bit brighter. I like how that color just kind of fades to the bottom color of the sky. It looks like the grass area just kind of fades away. That's why I added a little bit of extra white up there. So for this next step, we need to let this background dry completely, because we will be transferring the bike drawing to the canvas. If you're drawing your bike on your own, I have dimensions on the website for the drawing portion that kind of help you with that. But if you're using a traceable template with me, you want to go ahead and take your graphite paper and your printable. So this one was printed out on 2 sheets. It's a PDF document that you can print, and it's already sized for the 11 by 14. And you just kind of like position it. So you want to make sure your wheels are on the grass and they're not floating in the sky. So you want to double check, kind of lift your paper up to make sure it's positioned. Mine is not exactly centered. Mine is kind of pushed to the right because I'm going to be drawing the heart balloons. I want to make sure that I have room for those balloons. If you don't have this graphite transfer paper, you can turn your design over, your traceable template over, and apply pencil on the back. And then that works kind of the same way. Then you can be able to trace on the front. But these graphite sheets are relatively inexpensive, and you really only need 1 sheet because it can be reused over and over again. So when you're finished, just go ahead and lift up your template, and we have our bike already drawn on the canvas. I'm going to go ahead and draw these balloons in. So these are kind of attached to the back fender of the bike. So I'm doing 2 kind of wavy lines, little triangle, and then a little heart shape for the actual balloon shape. So I'm going to do 3 of these. You can do more balloons if you want. And then we want to go ahead and load our palette with 3 colors: Naphthol Crimson, Titanium White, and Mars Black. Those are the 3 colors we'll be using to paint the bike. And we'll be using this number 4 round brush. So you don't have to go in this order. You can paint in a different order, but this is just the order that I went in to paint it. I started with the tires, and I'm using the color Mars Black. So I'm just taking my black. It helps to add just a little bit of water into that black to help it flow. So I would say don't worry about perfection with these circles. I'm trying to keep the same thickness throughout, but if your thickness varies, so like for example, if it's a little bit thicker down here and a little bit thinner at the top, that's okay. We're not making a realistic bike. It's kind of an illustrative bike, so don't stress too much about these circles. And then go ahead and do the other black tire as well. So make sure that you're stopping at any of the frame parts where that tire would be going under. So like this part right here, I'm not painting that part black. I'm skipping that part. And then before your black dries, kind of wipe your brush off a little bit and add some white on the tip of your brush. We want to just kind of gently blend in some white. So this is going to give our tire a little bit of highlight. It's also going to give it some color variation so it's not solid black. And just go ahead and do that to both of your tires. It's okay if it's turning gray in some areas. So right here, it just kind of disappeared because that that black was super wet right there. Just a little bit of white in there, just kind of let it fade out. So next, I'm gonna add shadow underneath the tires. And you can choose to rinse your brush off, or you can just wipe it off, and it's okay if there's a little bit of black or a little bit of white still on the brush. We want to load our brush in just the green. So this should be darker than our ground. So if it's not showing up darker for you, you might want to add just a teeny bit of black into your green so that it's darker. So we're going to take our brush just under that tire and we're going to paint very loosely left and right strokes to make kind of a blobbed area under our tire to make it look like it's on the ground and it's casting kind of a shadow. We're not being super detailed about this shadow. It's just left and right strokes to create kind of almost a triangular area. It can be a circular area if you want to do it kind of more circular. That just gives some more color and interest in the ground and makes it look like the tires are on the ground and the bike is not floating in the air. For this next step, you do need to rinse all that green and black and white off of your brush because we'll be painting the fenders. So this is Naphthol Crimson. If you wanted to change the color of your bike, that would be your color of choice. So I'm doing a red bike, so this is the color I'm using. So we are going to be using the white for kind of highlight, but for now, let's just use the red and don't worry about highlighting or anything like that. We're just filling in the shape. So you can go in this order or you can go in a different order. There's no particular order for this. We're just painting all the pieces that are the frame of the bike. So everything that would be red. We're not painting the pedal or the seat or the handle area yet. Adding a tiny bit of water into your paint will be helpful for getting it to flow and also helps you control for these smaller areas. So before this dries, a little bit of white on your brush, so just like what we did with the tires, and just kind of gently blend that in. So this is going to make the body, the red part of our bike to be a little bit shiny. So just on one side of it, let that white kind of blend gently with your red. And then we're just going to continue on. So I didn't rinse my brush, and that's okay. That's okay that this part of the red is a little bit lighter. It gives it some variation in color. So just painting that piece. That piece is a little bit narrow towards the center of the wheel, and it gets a little bit thicker up to the basket. I am going to paint the handle next. The handle was done using the red, but then I took some white, kind of lightened that white and made this part of the handle a little bit lighter. And then a little kind of oval shape on the end towards the left. And then I'm going to paint the two fenders. So it gets kind of thinner at the bottom and thick at the top. So just a little bit more pressure on the brush towards the top, but same exact color. And then you can do that highlight thing with the white color if you want to do that. And then same for this side. And then we can use the white to add some more highlight to our bike. Just letting that blend with the red. So if you're doing the highlight thing and your red is dry, then you can always go back and add a little bit more red next to your white, and that'll get that to blend as well. So next, let's go ahead and rinse, and let's make a gray on our palette for the metal part that's next to our handle. So the handlebar. And I just mixed about equal parts white and black, maybe a little bit more white to kind of make it a lighter gray. So it's solid at first, but then we can add white in there to make it shiny. But I also used this color for the top of the seat, the saddle. So that one's that gray color, and then the bottom piece of that kind of gives it that 3D look. That one's solid black. So it gives it kind of a two-tone look. And then the pedal, I did black. Kind of the bar that attaches to the pedal is black as well. This whole piece is black. And then the very center of each of the wheels, we're doing the little circle. And then I want to highlight the handlebar, the seat, and the pedal with white. So rinse all the black off and dry the brush, and then let's just add white to the tip of the brush. And we can do, so this is still wet, so it's able to blend. So right here, did a little bit of highlighting. And then on the handlebar, same thing, let that kind of blend. and then on our pedal as well. I'm going to paint the spokes of the bike next, and so we can do this with the round brush, but these lines are super thin, so I'm going to grab my black Posca paint pen. This one that I grabbed is the ultra fine one, and it could actually probably work better if it wasn't the ultra fine one. So this one, I noticed that if I press too hard, it starts kind of splashing, and I don't like that. But if it was the kind of the medium point, it probably worked perfect. Or even a Sharpie would work for this step, or just your round brush and black paint works as well. I'm being a little more illustrative about these spokes, and they're not even like touching the wheel. But I also want to use the white. So I'm using that white and kind of going over each of them. Kind of makes them look a little bit more shiny by doing that. We can have them touch the inner part of the wheel. Just taking that. Then I'll go back with the paint pen and do a few more spokes. And then let's go ahead and repeat and do the same thing for the other side. So black paint pen for the lines, and then adding some white in it to make them look kind of shiny and faded. Then we can go ahead and do the balloons. So I use the paint pen for the balloon strings. Again, you can use the regular brush for that. It's up to you. A Sharpie. It's just black thin lines, and these balloons are attached to the back fender. If you want to do like a basket thing above the back tire, you can do that, but I just had the strings kind of attached like a back rack sort of thing. They're just attached to the back fender. And then go ahead and paint your balloons. So Quinacridone Magenta is that kind of magenta color that I loaded onto my palette, and that's the color I did for this far right balloon. You're welcome to change the colors of the balloons. And then on the left part of the balloon, I added a little bit of white, kind of highlight that, gives it that 3D look, and just kind of blended that in with the rest of that color. The middle balloon, I did just titanium white, and the far left balloon I did with Naphthol Crimson. This painting can easily be a multiple holiday painting. Just had the thought that it could be like a 4th of July painting if you can do like star balloons, red, white, and blue. St. Patrick's Day, it would work for a St. Patrick's Day theme, little clover shaped balloons maybe, or just green balloons that are decorated with maybe clovers in the basket, shamrocks. Could be an Easter painting, Easter eggs in the basket. Those balloons need to dry before they can be decorated even further, but then I'm going to take my paint pen and actually get these strings and make it look like they're tied to the fender. Hopefully that wheel doesn't get caught up on those balloons and we'll have a very messy Valentine's Day ride. I'm just taking that and kind of attaching that further to the fender. In this next step, I'm going to be making brown on my palette. And to do that, so I'm going to be painting the basket next. To do that, we're going to mix equal parts green and red together. So when you mix green and red together, maybe a teeny bit more red than green, you're going to get this dark brown looking color. And then add a little bit of white into that. It's a little bit more white than I wanted. And a little bit of yellow into that. So you're going to get kind of this kind of like a raw umber sort of warm brown looking color because we added yellow into that. So if you want to use your own brown because you have brown available, you can go ahead and do that. But since brown was not a color I said that I used for this tutorial, we just made our brown. So that's the brown that we'll be using to paint our basket. So go ahead and paint your first layer. So we're just painting the shape of the basket in. We will be adding texture to this later, but this is just the first layer. Paint the entire basket shape, including the top rim part. Try your best to go around the frame of the bike, so we don't want to paint over any of that red that's overlapping our basket. And then for the texture part, let's go ahead and kind of make a darker version of that brown. Again, if you have your own brown, just grab a darker brown than the one that you just used. So I added a little bit more red, a little bit more green to this. You could even add a little bit of black to it to kind of make it darker. That's so this texture will stand out. So for the texture of this basket, you want to just take that color and do little plus marks. I made that part a little bit darker so it shows up. So you might have to vary that so it shows up. If the first layer of the basket is too wet and it's just kind of mushing together, let it dry a little bit and then try this. So all it is a bunch of little plus marks that just kind of go throughout the basket. So that creates that kind of basket weave texture. And then I want to kind of loosely outline parts of the basket. So let's go ahead and rinse, dry, and just load the black on the tip of the brush. So very, very fine detail. And then like right here in the bottom, I'm outlining that bottom line and this line as well. And then let's just go ahead and outline the sides, a little bit of the top, and then the side right here. Gives that basket some more definition. Then I'm going to rinse, dry, and use some titanium white to kind of add some lighter color into the basket. Starting with the rim, I did these little vertical lines just along the rim. So little tiny vertical tick marks. And then I did some more plus marks for the basket weave, but that adds some lighter color in that texture of the basket as well. Then I'm going to rinse, dry. I'm going to add I'm going to fix the fender on the left and then add some ribbons to the handle. So this piece right here, I'm just extending that over. And then for the handlebar, there's these little ribbons that are kind of going downwards. I'm just doing paint right on the tip of the brush and just a very loose sort of wavy line going down. We can vary that color by adding white or magenta to the brush. So next I did a few more sort of white highlights on the wheel. These ones a little bit more brighter than the other ones because the other ones kind of blended with the black when I created them. So these are just a few more pops of brighter white in the wheel. That one caught some of the red, but that's okay. So next, let's go ahead and paint all the flowers and leaves in the basket. And I used a combination of the Quinacridone Magenta, Titanium White. You can even use the light pink color that we used in the background. But first, I'm just going to make kind of a lighter pink color. I'm going to mix some white with that Quinacridone Magenta on my palette. So it's going to make kind of a light pink color. So just take that color and make kind of like this circular shape. So I'm kind of just taking my brush and doing little C strokes that form the shape of the rose. Like if the rose is completely open and you're looking at it from the very top, it's rounded, but then we're using that C shape, C stroke to kind of create those petals. So that's the first layer. The second layer will be either darker or lighter than the first layer color. So I did two kind of lighter ones, two darker ones. You can kind of mix and mash if you want to do. You can even use the yellow, do some yellow flowers in there. But I did a variety of like light and dark colors. So then what you want to do is go ahead and rinse your brush off. And for our second layer, so sometimes I do this before it dries, sometimes I wait for it to dry, but I like when the color kind of mixes. So this is just the Quinacridone Magenta, and I did the little C strokes starting in the center, and you do little kind of C strokes going outwards, and that just creates the different layer of color in your roses. And then if you did darker ones, you want to do an opposite color. So we want to do the lighter. So we did the lighter color from the center and kind of working your way outwards. You could do more roses if you want. I'm going to go ahead and rinse dry and use just the red to do some bright pops of red in our basket. So these could be rosebuds maybe, or tulips. We don't really know. They're just very kind of abstract. So just little curves going upwards, creating kind of an oval shape with these red pops. You could even put hearts in the basket. You want little hearts in there. And then when you got all your flowers in, you can do more flowers if you want. I'm going to do little tiny white dots, baby's breath flowers in here as well. So just rinse dry, grab the white, little dots, and I'm doing little clusters of white dots that are just kind of hanging out of the basket. And then we can use our green to create the little green leaf, greenery pieces, stems. So go ahead, rinse, dry your brush, grab your green. These are really tiny, so I like to kind of twist my brush when I'm loading the color onto the brush. We can do little stems, we can do little leaves. It's such a small area, so we don't need to worry about making this look super realistic. Have little sticks sticking out and then add little tiny leaf shapes. So if you want them to be more branch-like, we can have them kind of curve down, and then you can do these little tiny oval strokes on each side of the branch to create some leaf pieces that are hanging down. And like I said before, you can add more flowers and details in there if you want. The next thing I'm going to do is decorate the balloons. So our balloon that's on the far left, that one has some white little polka dots. Our balloon that's on the far right has the word love on it, and I left the balloon in the middle blank with no decorations. And you can customize this and change the decorations, lettering, words if you want. If you have a white paint pen, that might actually be super helpful for this step. But sometimes I find the white paint pens aren't opaque enough to go over this color, so that's why I'm using the brush here. But you can try that with paint pens. You can do a lot of little details with those pens. And that is it. This is the conclusion of how to paint Valentine's Day bike. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thanks for watching, and thanks for painting with me.